Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie H. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much to the committee for this loving invitation. Sheila, I hope I can do this session justice. I kind of feel like Debbie's last drink. I'm like this little whimper at the end of this incredible conference. This this talk could also be um, always feeling too inadequate for general service. By the way, thank you to all the speakers this morning. So inspired. Alan, you were cracking me up. The profoundly crippling self-esteem. That is completely how I feel today after listening to Ashley. Wow, what an incredible presentation. I took note. Do not share Uganda story. Crosses off list. Yours was that I have a story, but your Africa story that was profound and so beautiful. Thank you for allowing me to hear it. And for all the panelists, my gosh, it was just really, really great to hear everyone. Yuko, thank you for sharing the language of the heart. Um, Julie, thank you for the perseverance. Dave, thank you for just the mention of room to grow made me smile. There was so many great moments, and I'm going to do my best to share on a topic I've never really shared on. So I'm not any type of expert in general service. I'm not an expert in absolutely anything. I'm not an authority on Alcoholics Anonymous, on general service, on the traditions, on the concepts. Uh, and hey, if you're here and you don't identify as young, that's cool because I kind of don't really identify as young as much anymore either. But I think maybe inexperience in AA, willing to grow in AA, feeling like you don't have a place in general service because you're not an expert in AA. You're never too anything to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have my little star on because service is the secret of my life. Absolutely. The Grapevine daily quote of the day was perfection. I just want to, if you didn't read it, it says, "Sometimes I forget to feel gratitude for my sobriety. This is why I must continue to work with others, to go to meetings, to be of some service to the world around me, not because these are good things, but rather so that I can once again be stimulated into feelings of gratitude for this life I have found." Um, Service in AA is everything. It is the thing that keeps me grounded. It is my remembrance. It is there's an author that says something about service is the rent I pay to live on earth, right? Service is the rent I pay to stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And real quick, let me qualify myself. Um, I have a sobriety date. It's January 17th, 2006. That means I woke up this morning with 5,656 days of continuous sobriety, free from the desire to drink or self destruct. That's a result of our 36 principles, a really loving sponsor, a really loving God, women I sponsor, and what I get to do in Alcoholics Anonymous on a daily basis. I'm going to talk about my role in general service, but I think the most important role that I have in AA is being a member of a home group. I said that my home group is Folsom Big Book Group Monday night. We're fully back in person. We doors open at 7. The meeting starts at 8 p.m. And I think like I said, the most important service work I do is reaching out my hand to the newcomer was they walk in the door and making sure that they're the hand of AA to greet them. So wherever I exist on our service structure, that remains the place where I'm the most grounded, where I am rooted. I have to be rooted in a home group. General service is amazing, and I hope to share some of the mountaintops that I've gotten to experience in general service. But really, it's getting to shake a newcomer's hand on their first meeting that I think is better than anything on earth. So let's see where to begin. You know, this is like I'm like the YPA person, I guess. I'm the young person. But wait, back up. What do I do in general service today? Let me start there. So my position is one that most people go, huh? What? Who? Even people who are pretty involved in general service don't know of it. It's one small paragraph in the service manual. Go find it. It's called an appointed committee member. So I am an appointed committee member to our trustees Literature Committee, which if you were here earlier for Steve S., he's been our incredible, wonderful staff member on that committee. Steve, I'm going to tell a story about you in a minute. And so I get to serve there. It's really interesting. I'm not a trustee. I'm not a member of the board, but I attend our quarterly board meetings in New York, and I have a vote on the trustees literature committee. I don't have a vote anywhere else. I'm not a voting member of the conference. I really see this position in concept 10 as part of concept 11. I'm like crazy, part of like that building up of the best committee possible. So I was selected. I didn't go through any type of group conscience other than the board. And I think I'll start there, because how I came into this is it is really, I think, the essence of my talk today. If there are young people or people who are interested in general service and feel like they're not enough, feel like they aren't an expert, this is where this comes from. So um, I applied, and I actually didn't even know what an ACM was, like most people. I've been sober, like you heard, for 15. Well, at the time, I guess it was 12. I was 12 years sober at the time, and my area delegate and I friends, and we know each other, and she suggested that I fill out an application for a call for an ACM, specifically regarding young people literature. And I got sober young. That's really my big qualifier for this job. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous for the first time when I was 19 years old. I found myself at my first meeting. I have stayed since I was 21. I had to do some additional research to really understand. I had to be beaten into a sufficient state of reasonableness by alcohol. So I had to drink again, and that that second time coming back in the program, um, with the full knowledge of my condition, right? The full understanding of what I suffer from in terms of my alcoholism, that really understanding the allergy, really understanding the mental obsession. I came into a place at 21 years old of the willingness to do anything, despite how I felt about it, despite what it meant. Like, for example, going to a camp out with young people, that's terrifying. No, thank you. Ashley was talking about being a sweater. Dude, I sweat. Yes, absolutely. I'm a sweater too. And that's like instant sweat. But saying yes to it because I was out of my own ideas. And consistently throughout early recovery in young people's and Alcoholics Anonymous, it was get in the car, Katie. Okay. It was come to this business meeting. Okay. Raise your hand and be an intergroup rep. What's intergroup? Okay. Be a sponsor. I've never done that. Okay. Like just consistently saying yes to AA, even though I didn't know what it meant. I didn't have experience. I wasn't the expert. I was profoundly a fraud. That's that's the history of my life. I am a fraud. If only you knew who and what I really am and how little I know and how horrible I am, you wouldn't want me anywhere near you. But I said yes because, like I said, I was beaten into a state of reasonableness by alcoholism, that I knew that my way of thinking wasn't good, and I was willing to do whatever it took. And people said, service is the secret. And people said, say yes to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I just consistently did that. So I've held, I've done lots of stuff in AA before really getting into general service. I was a consumer of YPA for sure, more of a taker than a giver. I never, I didn't really participate on a committee until I think I was maybe a decade sober. But I loved going to YPA conferences. I loved the energy. I'm so appreciative and will always be appreciative of all of those service committees that put on Icky Paws and Wacky Paws and Acky Paws and all of the paws, right? I get to go to an in-person Neti Paw next week in North Dakota. And Debbie, I'm going to wear this. I'm going to tell everybody about this awesome conference. And you know, I'm so grateful for those experiences. experiences. I served as a PI chair in the Bay Area. I was an intergroup rep. As PI, by the way, I got to go into high schools and colleges and learn about how to share about my experience to the public, about how to talk about Alcoholics Anonymous. What a lesson in our traditions. I'm really grateful for that experience. Um, I, I've gotten to sponsor. I've sponsored a lot of women. I love getting to sponsor women. I've gotten to serve in general service as a GSR. I've gone to be the H&I rep. All the different service entities in AA. And so when I found myself at 12 years sober, filling out an application with the questions being, why are you the right person for this role? I didn't really have an answer other than I got sober young and I'm willing to do the work. I love deeply, deeply, deeply love Alcoholics Anonymous. Every single good thing in my life is as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous. Every single good thing. This just to kind of veer really quick. I spent the weekend with my mom who came up. I'm 7 months pregnant. I have a shelf right here you can't see, and we had my baby shower yesterday, and she was asking me about this, which is she always is kind of interested in what I do in what I get to participate in AA. And she said, well, don't you have like a script? And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to say. She's like, I would be so terrified. How could you do that? And it's like, my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous is that it's faith over fear. And that when I bring God in to all activities, I'm always inspired and I always have the right things to say in the moment. And I've never had to worry about it. And my mom was kind of blown away by that, and she said to me, you getting sober was one of the greatest things that happened to me. Not just because she has a sober daughter, but she explained just how she's gotten to hear through my experience about principles and God. And it was a really beautiful moment that we had together this weekend. You guys brought the innocence back into the lives of me and my mom and my dad, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm a crier too. I think Alan said that. I'm a crier, and I'm super hormonal because I'm pregnant, so I apologize in advance. But I'm just willing. I just have the willingness to do it. But I can tell you some of the questions on the application didn't even a lot of them had to do with AA, of course. My participation. I was the chair of SACIPA. My participation as a GSR. At the time when I filled out the application, no, I wasn't yet. I was not yet the alternate DCM for my district, but I was going to be. About sponsorship. I've not this isn't meant to be impressive or not, because probably most of you could blow me out of the water, but I've sponsored about 100 women in AA, and I've heard lots of fifth steps, and most of those women are under 30, many in their teens. So I felt uniquely qualified to participate in topics that had to do with young people. And at the time, actually, I was sponsoring a 17-year-old who, my gosh, she's like 22, I think. It's like wild. And then it was also about my work experience. And funny enough, the theme of this being too young, or who's at the table. In my work life, I am usually the only woman at the table, and I'm always the youngest by a good 15 years. And so AA showed me what it looks like to show up, and to what it looks like to participate, even at my work table, right? And it's given me the courage to have a voice. And that's what I've found in general service as well. I'm often the youngest. Um, I'm happy to say that I'm generally not the only woman. I love the representation at the board with women. I think AA is doing a really good job there. But I got to share about my work experience and what I do in my professional life, and that is certainly something that's considered when the board looks at applicants for an ACM. So I filled out my application not thinking very much that anything was gonna happen. I just kind of did it because, like I said, I just say yes to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I ended up getting a call one day from the General Service Office in New York. I'm like, why are they calling me? Again, that's the theme of this: fraud. Like, who am I? But I get this call. I nerded out forever. I got to talk to Sandra, who's one of our staff, and she set up an interview with. There were 6 people down selected, and I got to have an interview with Greg, our general manager at the time, and several other trustees, including the chair of the trustees literature committee. And um, oh my gosh, how thrilling. I wasn't even panicked about it. I was just so excited to get to talk to Greg. What an opportunity. And we had a 30-minute interview, and there were 5 questions. And I actually shared some embarrassing things about me. They were asking about my experience with Tradition 2. And I shared a story that didn't make myself look very good. It's about how I actually didn't act in the spirit, as Debbie would say, of Tradition 2 at my home group. And I kind of like pushed something through pretty hard and made everyone pretty upset because I didn't consider the group conscience, and how I got to make amends to the group, and how you guys, I am a constant work in progress. I just am. I'm so grateful that I came into AA and I didn't have to get perfect right away, and I don't have to get perfect at all. And that this whole deal in AA, whether it's general service or it's recovery, it's whatever legacy we're talking about, is this journey of learning, of growth, of it's about how I get there. It's not what I know to start, right? And I shared those things, and I immediately remember going, "Oh, what an idiot! I should have made myself sound better," but I did. And those are the stories I shared. And at the end, I'm going to share a whole bunch of just fun stories, if you don't mind, about my experience on the board. But I asked Greg. They asked me, "Would you have any questions for us?" And I said, "Greg, what keeps you up at night?" Because that just is a great question to ask somebody who's in a position of leadership, I think. And he said, I think a lot about, do we have the right people in the right service at the right time? And I thought that that was a really great answer for someone who is the general manager of our general service office. I really liked that answer. And I think that can apply at my home group, right? Do we have the right trusted servants in the right positions at the right time? Not that I'm here to manage and control things, but am I taking into consideration the people I vote into my home group, right? Do we have the right GSR during Zoom? Do we have the right secretary who can help with tech stuff, right? Are we taking into consideration not just what the group needs, but that newcomer who's going to come into our group, and are they going to have the experience that may help to keep them sober? It's something to take into consideration. So I got the role. That's why I'm here. Um, I was deeply, deeply humbled. Again, I feel like such a fraud, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I had no idea, right? I hadn't even read the description of an ACM in the service manual. It was just literally me going, I'm willing to do work in AA because I will do anything it takes to stay sober, and this is probably one of them. And so that actually was very terrifying. Once I got through the interview, it's like, oh no, I have to like do something now. And so, I didn't start, let me tell you, I didn't start perfectly. And the next story I'm going to tell is, if I had to do a vignette on my talk, this is it. So ready? My very first board meeting was in Rye in New York, and not in Times Square, when this hotel out where they go once a year out in the middle of nowhere. It also kind of felt like a whimper. I'm like, where? I was like kind of excited to go to Manhattan, but that's where we were. And I walked in, and I was greeted by a staff member, and she instantly knew who I was. And I was like, how do you know who I am? Kind of like in home group, when a newcomer comes in and I instantly know that they're new, right? Because she goes to these, and she knew I was the new person. I didn't realize that at the time, but she knew I was the new person and showed me where I was supposed to go for lunch. And I sat down at a table, and I didn't know anybody. I'm like, wow, this is a real thing. Like these are trustees of the board, and I don't belong here. And these are really smart people, and I'm not as smart as them, and they've been sober longer than me, and all the things that I'm not, they are. And luckily I sit next to Carolyn W., who at the time was a non-trustee director. She strikes up a conversation and I'm like sweating. What am I going to say? And she immediately asked me what panel I served on. Internal dialogue is and I just, meekly said, well, I've never been a delegate, and I don't belong here. And I've actually only ever been, I lied at first. I said, I've been a DCM. I was an alternate DCM. I couldn't even be fully honest with her. I've been a GSR, and I've been involved in young people, and I don't know why I'm here, and I don't have 20 years of experience in general service. And I like literally said that because I was just so nervous. And Carolyn looked at me and said, I want you here more than anyone. She said, I've been indoctrinated by general service for a good 25 years. And I have some really fixed ideas about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think that you're going to bring something fresh and new that I had never considered. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. It makes me want to cry because, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And it's a concept now, really, well, it's tradition too, right? That I bring into my home group, right? Am I willing to hear the person with 30 days at my business meeting? Or do I shrug them off because they may not be the person with 20 years at home group who really knows what's best, right? Like, am I willing to hear and be open-minded to different points of view? It really brought the whole tradition into my mind in a brand new way, right? That every single voice in Alcoholics Anonymous is so important, every single one. No one better or bigger than another. And her, I'm telling you, she's one of the smartest people I know. Steve can probably say that. She's very smart. Willing to hear what I have to say was so profoundly humbling. I'll forever be grateful for that moment. I don't even know if she knows how much that meant to me, but it meant a lot. And then the very next thing that happened was really my very first board meeting. Again, I'm going, I don't belong here. And the very first thing that we do is approve the minutes from the prior board meeting, which I wasn't even at. And so I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh. And, the chair at the time, Carol, said, all in favor. And I didn't raise my hand. And she looked at me, Katie, vote. You're a participant at this table. We're all right of participation. We're all participating here. We want to see your hand. I'm like, I wasn't there. Didn't matter. I mean, right away, I was thrown into this circumstance where I was a part of. I wasn't a second class citizen in Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, I was I was brought into the middle. And again, I have to constantly take my own inventory. Am I doing that in my group? Am I encouraging the new person to vote? Or am I trying to control it because there's some way that I want my group to do something, right? It was pretty incredible. That first, I'm going to kind of go back, that very first board meeting, I got to meet so many people. Yeah, I got to meet all these new friends that I have, and I got to meet Mr. Ward Ewing for the first time. And right, he's a non-alcoholic. He was a non-alcoholic trustee. He's trustee emeritus, and I was just so interested. He's in him. He has a doctorate of divinity, right? Non-alcoholic. He's willing to devote, well, I don't know, probably 42 weekends of his life a year to Alcoholics Anonymous for fun and for free. And I said, what do you get from AA? Because he said AA has been the biggest gift in my life. I'm like, what? And he said, the biggest gift in my life has been the 12 steps, and that he had been studying them since 1980, and they changed his life. Blew me away, right? A doctorate of divinity. And he shared in detail about what the 12 steps have meant to him, and it just absolutely blew me away. So and then one more quick story, right? I tell this first board, I really feel like a fraud. I don't belong. Why am I here? This is crazy. And there are all these little moments I was gifted, that God helped me put on some really special glasses that I got to see where I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And this actually has nothing to do with general service, but I stayed an extra day and did some sightseeing around New York, and I went to the Museum of Modern Art with a sponsee, and we're walking around and we're looking at art, and I turn my head and I see Bill Wilson. Or what I thought was Bill Wilson. It was actually the actor James Woods, but my mind, because I saw the film My Name is Bill when I was in rehab. James Woods is Bill Wilson in my mind. And so I'm like in New York City, um, doing this work in general service, and I'm walking alongside Bill Wilson. So it's always cracked me up that happened. So anyways, back to a little experience with what I get to do on the board. I've been on the board or I've been an ACM for 3 years now. I'm just starting my fourth and final year. When I started, it was all about about young people's literature. So specifically, the Too Young pamphlet and the Young People in AA pamphlet. The Young People in AA pamphlet was about to get a makeover. There were stories that were submitted. I actually had submitted my story before I became an ACM. FY, just like a call out for like submitting stories. Like, we want the stories. I've gotten to read so many stories. The grapevine wants your stories. And writing my story took, like, I don't know, probably 30 minutes. It wasn't a huge effort. And I got to send it in and participate in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I really encourage people, if you've never written a grapevine article, do so. It'll probably get published, and it's like pretty cool to participate in AA in that way. But they're revising the Young People in AA pamphlet, and then there was a lot of discussion at that time 3 years ago about the Too Young pamphlet and its effectiveness. So I joined the committee and said I really didn't even know what the process was to do any of this, but I had some ideas, and I didn't even check with anyone. But I started going, I'm going to start reaching out to a ton of young people's committees. I didn't realize that this wasn't a normal process. So this is kind of like what Carolyn was saying to me about how I'm going to have new ways of thinking and doing. So I started reaching out to every young people committee I knew, and I've been around a while, so I'm reaching out to this one and that, like, not just conference committees, but some of like EBIPA in the Bay Area and SACIPA, and I have sponsees around the country. So I reached out to one in North Carolina and someone in Texas, and I just kind of started like going, hey, can I come and talk to you guys? Can we have some like sharing sessions? Because like I said, I'd been um, involved in general service at the top of the triangle, the inverted triangle, as a GSR. So I kind of knew that process, and I knew about kind of more representation than like me giving my ideas. And I wanted to kind of foster that communication. So I started taking a lot of notes and just asking questions, not sharing my opinion, but just having some open dialogue about, hey, are we reading pamphlets? Is this helpful? What about art? What about online? What about, like, and just, QR codes, and having these big robust conversations about the role of literature in young people's, and is this obsolete, right? One of the first things I noticed when I went to, I think it was the SACIPA committee meeting, um, I wanted to talk about the Too Young pamphlet, and I brought some, but everyone pulled out their phone and looked at the PDF, right? No one was holding a physical piece of literature, right? So that was like an important thing that has really driven a lot of the discussion that I've gotten to participate in on the committee. Is, the importance of paper literature, but what are we doing to make our literature more accessible and readable online? Because when we just, if you just put a PDF online, it's a lot of like scrolling versus maybe something that's more interactive and different. And like I said, I didn't even know this was a new process. But I did. I actually created a new process. Our newest AC, not well, yeah, she is our newest ACM on the committee. Amalia, she is working on the Spanish women's pamphlet, and she is doing a similar thing that I did. So I'm really grateful actually that I didn't have 20 years of AA experience, that I didn't just kind of go with the normal flow, and I got to, kind of reinvent something and maybe make something better. It seems like it's working. So that was really cool that I got to do that. I went to Icky Paw and I got in Boston. I got to have a whole section there and we got to talk about, again, all of these things. I got to bring it back to the committee and we're going to continue the work with the Too Young pamphlet in this coming year. But what we did get, and it's you'll hopefully get to see it soon, talk about a highlight in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that the young people in AA pamphlet is totally different. We decided, with the help of all these committees I talked to and working with publishing, is we're going to have a whole new, brand new format, that instead of kind of like the traditional pamphlet of story, 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 we're doing like this choose your adventure type of deal, where uh, I don't know if you remember those books as a kid, but it was like, turn to page 17 if you want to go into the scary tunnel, and turn to page 36 if you want to take the hot air balloon ride. It's kind of like that, but experience, strength, and hope. So you follow a character, you follow someone's story through the pamphlet of who you identify with the most, as a way of kind of breaking up all the text and maybe creating something a little new and working on different graphics. And it's just been such a joy, right? Mountaintop of I didn't even know what I was signing up for, and this is what I got to do. Something that I signed up. I kind of said, hey, I'll do this ACM stuff for YPAW. But what I ended up, really getting to do the last couple of years is work on RIPTAB. That's our really cool, fun acronym. Steve was mentioning it earlier. Researching issues, possible tools, and access to the big book. And I think I said this in the beginning, right? My experience in Alcoholics Anonymous is the journey. It's not about what I know now or where I'm at now, but it's the work that I get to do and how I get to learn and grow. And so much could be wrapped up in this experience, right? So, I mean, from tradition 2 to really concept 1, right? Before I got really involved in general service, what I heard a lot about was, well, trustees are trying to do this, and they're trying to do this, right? Like this idea of it's top down, right? That there's direction coming down to the fellowship and motive, and it's not that at all, right? So this work on the committee was all about providing information to the fellowship. The experience has been over many years that the office has been receiving letter after request, after motion from area committee to assembly around access to the big book. This has come up in many general service conferences about plain language, a new version. I mean, and if you could see, I think, geez, Steve, we had 35 different requests about modifying or changing the big book. And what we did as a subcommittee, at the request of Michelle Grinberg, who's the chairwoman of the board, was to try to understand all of this background and where is this coming from and what's happening here. Because you see, who I am as, I don't know, a drunk as a human, is I want to like tell people what to do. I want to find a solution. I want to control. Especially when I think about, what I thought a general service board was. I work at a major corporation. The CEO makes all the decisions and tells people what to do and dictates, right? And in this process, it's the complete opposite. It's how can we as a subcommittee provide the most useful information so the fellowship can make the best decision, right? Because concept 1 says the final responsibility and the ultimate authority for AA World Services should always reside in the collective conscious of our whole fellowship, not Katie's conscious, not the couple members of the board, but of AA. So it was this incredible learning of I have opinions. I have a lot of opinions. I have good opinions. If everyone did what I did about the world, there would be no wars. I mean, it would be great, right? And especially in Alcoholics Anonymous, let me tell you. And I had some very fixed ideas when I came on the committee about the book, about what should happen with the book, about what the book means, about how it should be properly used. I had ideas. And stepping into this role at the bottom of our service triangle was this concept of like, actually, I don't know. And can I set aside just for a little bit some of these opinions and ideas and think of it differently and consider that it's not just for me. Consider the broader, bigger fellowship of AA. Because, right, I have this lens that is my experience. And my experience is I came into a great home group, I came into great sponsorship. I had the old timer reading the book with me, and with a dictionary, and us in 1935 dictionary, and us going through every word, and I had young peoples, and I was in a major city, and there were meetings 24/7, and um, right, like I have this limited experience. Like, can I step up and can I look at and maybe consider the person who gets sober in Wyoming? What would it look like if me at 21 got sober in Wyoming, and there were five meetings in a week in that area, and no one looked like me? Like, what would that experience be? Could I consider the inmate who's getting sober in prison, who certainly might not even have an H&I meeting, may not have an old timer? Something I learned that really profoundly changed my perspective was that our corrections desk receives one letter a week from an inmate requesting help understanding our big book. And that blew my mind, because that's actually someone who wrote a letter. Who are all the people who aren't writing letters? And again, it takes me out of my own experience, and I have to consider who's not in the room and why. I remember the first time I heard Debbie say this, it stuck with me forever, right? Do I consider the person who has yet to get sober the way that Bill and Bob and our first members considered me 80 years in the future? Am I having the same level of consideration, or am I very pigeonholed in my own perspective, which is so easy to do? I mean, not at a fault. It actually takes quite the exercise. And for the past 2 years, I've gotten to pray and meditate on this topic, and I don't even know if I have today a resolution to it. I know that if I hope, if you haven't read the RipTab report, I think that we do have a link in the chat to it. Please read it. It's full of some really interesting information that our committee put together, like Steve mentioned, that this group of people we all have fixed ideas about our book and about the fellowship, um, put aside to look at information that might foster the most robust conversation, which I find so beautiful. I think, one of the things that I appreciate and I've learned so much at the, sitting in a board meeting of our General Service Board, is that every single committee or subcommittee starts with our chair. And I don't think this isn't written down anywhere. Everyone just does it, right? With, let us take a moment. Let us take 30 seconds to consider the alcoholic who's still suffering. Sometimes it's said as who we're serving and why, right? And I love that we get to ground in that way, that it's not about what we want, what I want. It's about who are we serving, and remembering that in everything that we do. That bringing that spirit in. I'm so grateful. And when COVID happened, I remember being so like, no, I don't get to go to Manhattan. I mean, it's like a really cool place to go, and I love pizza. If you need any recommendations, I can throw it out there for you. Um, uh, that was another education I got in general service, was great New York style pizza. But getting to be face to face with people, and I was so bummed that I was going to miss out on that. But what ended up happening was Our subcommittee, Steve, you tell me, I don't know, we probably met a dozen times last year. That would have on Zoom, which would have never gotten to happen if it was about flying back and forth across the country, and actually what that would have cost the fellowship. We got to meet consistently for hours at a time and talk through these issues and work on this and provide the best possible product for the fellowship to have this discussion. Like, who knew that COVID was going to be that amazing gift to the work that we got to do in alcohol? I got to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm so just blown away by, right? So again, my plug is read it if you haven't read it. So some other things I've gotten to work on is we're going to come out with a 3 legacy pamphlet, which is again, we got to, yay, I know, it's so awesome. It is really good, by the way. I was so profoundly impressed with the stories sent in. Something that if you think about what you have to do to create a piece of literature, is it's a lot of reading. I think I clocked, what was it, 25 hours of reading for just that one pamphlet, really making sure that I was examining each story and what it brought to either a tradition or a concept, and how is this going to help the fellowship, and just really careful consideration, right? I mean, one of the things that I didn't like about general service early on, what I thought I knew, that what I love now is how much time things take. I do love it, actually. I really appreciate it because, I'm a rush to make a decision. I'm haphazard. I want things done now. I was like the kid in school who had to be the first one done with her test, even if the answers were wrong. So like this idea of like slowing down a little bit and pausing, a little bit of restraint, is actually, I think that's the beauty of our fellowship today, and like this careful consideration, and let's all get to the same place. Let's all be in substantial unanimity, right? But we'll be talking about this big book issue for many years, I'm sure. And I hope so. I hope we all get to a place of substantial unanimity, because it is my experience that the unity of our fellowship is the most important thing that we have. And if half of us don't like a decision, I mean, look at what's happening, in the world about us, right? I think that's what is so special and so unique about Alcoholics Anonymous. So this careful consideration in anything that I do, whether it's reading stories for a pamphlet or walking a sponsee through the doctor's opinion. Am I wanting to rush it because I want to get to the next thing, or am I really making sure that this person understand what we're talking about? The gravity of alcoholism, the gravity of their illness, like all of these things, I just get to kind of slow down. I just get to pause just a little bit. And I'm so grateful for that. I love getting to watch that happen. And we have another year, exciting year of more rip tab work coming, and we'll see what happens. The next board is at the end of the month, and it'll be my last July board, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's funny, when I reflect back on my experience, my very first meeting, board weekend, I showed up having done pretty much nothing. I didn't really, I was just kind of there, like, what are we gonna do? And then, seeing the agenda and the amount of action items and things that I had to read, I was like stunned. And then the second time I had was a little more prepped, a little more prepared. By the end of my first year, I knew how much time and preparation had to go into it. Again, I don't have to know everything, and I don't have to be perfect right away. It took me a whole year to fully understand what my role was and what it meant to be prepared for a board weekend, like a whole year. I'm pretty slow, in terms not just the reading and the understanding, but of the prayer that I really have to bring into this, right? I have to ask myself as I'm going through these, is this my ego at play? Because we had some really fun, exciting board weekends. One in particular, around the 12 Traditions Illustrated pamphlet. And I have, guys, again, I'm going to tell you, I have some strong opinions about some things, and and there are a couple other items throughout my time that that when they came up, I really strongly disagreed with them. And but it didn't matter, right? What I had to look at was not my opinion on this, but is there enough information for the fellowship to have a discussion? You know, should the fellowship have this discussion? And most of the time, the answer is yes, right? Even if I don't like it, it's not up to me. It's up to our group conscience. And it really is about turning this all over to the fellowship and to God, that the right thing will happen. It always does when every single voice is heard, right, in the process. But it was so fascinating for me to really see what happened with the 12 illustrated pamphlet. Hopefully I can kind of share this, but you know, that was a conference action, right? So one conference had a conference action, told our trustees literature committee that we want a comprehensive change to this pamphlet. And you know, again, hopefully I'm not getting in trouble, but most people were very emotional about this decision. The love of this pamphlet was very clear to most people. In fact, our publishing director knew the person who did the artwork, personal attachment, and yet we move forward with what the fellowship asked us to do. Didn't matter what we thought or our personal feelings. We did we did what the fellowship requested, which was very hard, you know. And again, I had to kind of take a look at, where is this emotionalism, where is this duty, where is this responsibility, right? It was very interesting dynamic that I got to walk through personally. Oh, I have to tell, this just came to mind, my Steve story. I As I was, you know, kind of going through this, what is an ACM and what am I doing and how do I talk about this? And I'm, you know, I called Steve. I'm like, can I share about the work that I'm doing? And like, I know we have a delegate, and like, I was at the time still an alternate DCM. And I'm like, how does this all fit? You know, how does this all fit together? And he brought up concept 10 and about service authority and responsibility. And I had this light bulb moment that, like, well, first of all, it's not my role or responsibility to share about agenda topics, you know, when we have a delegate. That is their role and responsibility. That's part of their part of the service structure. I have no, there's not a job there, right? And then I had this realization that I have two jobs in AA. How awkward. I was ready to go to PRASA and I'm looking going, wait, I'm an alternate DCM and I'm an ACM? Like, how does that work? Like, which one am I? You know, and it was like, I saw the reason that we don't have multiple roles in general service. I can't represent both. Um, and I had to, you know, I had to resign my alternate. Luckily, we had someone that we were training already to be alternate DCM and move into that really easily. But I'm right. I'm literally learning as I grow all the time. Don't know what I'm doing, but I figure it out. And you know, the progress for me always in AA is how quickly I recognize it and make it right with however whatever that looks like. It's not that I do it perfectly, it's the time it takes for me to clean it up and to recognize my error. That's such a great example for me. So hopefully you all participated and went through the process of the 12 Traditions Illustrated pamphlet. It'll continuously be interesting to see what happens with that. But like I said, my own personal feelings or anyone's personal feelings ultimately came down to what the group conscience wants. And I remember feeling, I don't know, guilty, weird, bad for having such at the board in the boardroom having starting kind of having an opinion about it and speaking out. And sometimes I can feel like that a lot in AA. I like I said, I do have opinions, and I love our second tradition. It's absolutely something that I cherish and love so much. And I remember kind of feeling bad, like, should I, you know, share, like, what's my role here? Am I being a personality? And really not knowing how to juggle that. And I did, that was the hardest thing this past year, by the way. I'm trying to have a business meeting on Zoom, is feeling like I was one of the few people participating in terms of sharing my opinion or sharing, what I thought about an agenda topic. And I get very self-conscious about that. And I wanted to share with you, I just discovered this. This book is fantastic. Okay, if you haven't read it, this blew me away, and this all ties in, I promise. So Bill's talking about personality in the framework of principles, okay? And he's giving a talk to the General Service Conference. And he says, I'm not going to read the whole thing, just parts, but he says, you're not all here because you are the acme of meekness. You are here because you are individuals, and each of you has a personality, right? And then he said, so we must leave room for something called leadership. Concept 9. Let us never be hasty to say that when somebody is loudly in the minority, they are wrong. Let us not say because we are trying to persuade each other that we are out of order. After all, this is the way of democracy. This is the way of the group conscience. This is the way of the trusted servant. This means debate. I read this other. Oh wow, it is my responsibility. Yes, I am a person. I know I'm a personality. I know I am, but it is actually a form of leadership for me to share, for me to be in a group conscience and not be meek, not feel like the fraud, which I always feel like, not feel like my experience isn't important, not feel like because I'm a young person or because I'm new in sobriety or because I haven't been a participator as long as someone else, that I don't have a unique gift to bring. That's what this is saying, that I have a responsibility, it's a leadership role, and I need to speak up, whether that's in my home group discussion, whether that's at an area assembly, whether that's at the board. I have a responsibility to share, not to overpower and demean or call someone stupid, but right, to really share my experience, no matter what that is. But it's also my responsibility to be a listener, and check my own self, that when someone may be sharing something that maybe I completely disagree with, am I rolling my eyes? Am I turning away? What is my body language? Right? That we all give each other the same respect and recognition, right? Bill says that this sort of exercise of personality within the framework of the principles is the very essence of our life and of our growth. So let us trust our servants and let us trust each other. I just thought that was so beautiful. And I think that is ultimately the biggest lesson of all of this for me. When I got sober, I thought my life was over. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous and it was done. I was a goner. I was gonna have no more fun. I was completely useless. I'm a teenager. It's all over. And man, not even close. Not even close. Um, Raising my hand, saying yes to Alcoholics Anonymous, being a participant in Alcoholics Anonymous has been the most incredible gift of my life. My sponsor says all the time that when I put AA first, everything else becomes first class. And I often get this question about, well, like, shouldn't you wait till you're retired to get involved in young people's? And it's like, what? Wait for what? We need every single voice, right? Like, and it's been amazing to me because I guess I'm young. I'm in corporate America. I sponsor a lot of women. I have two stepchildren and a baby on the way. I'm very active in home group. I have a family life. I have all these things, and I don't have to be afraid of saying yes to general service. It's amazing how when I say yes and I put things on my calendar, God arranges the time so beautifully that there's always enough. So if you feel like maybe you don't have the time or you don't have the experience or you're too young or you're too much of a fraud, get rid of all of that and just say yes to general service, because again, the lessons, the people I've gotten to meet, these mountaintop experiences of getting to learn and see and grow in understanding of of the fellowship of AA, right? Of all of the experience of Alcoholics Anonymous that's so much bigger than me, right? I thought the whole world revolved around me, and when jumping into general service, I just see that my life is just this small part of the millions of people that make up the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. You have opened my eyes to a whole new sense of the world. I get to like walk around with magic glasses on. Like that's really what it feels like. That I get to have this whole new experience consistently in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I can't even thank you enough for that. All of you who have participated in my recovery, and how I get to utilize these concepts, these traditions, the steps of recovery in my life to learn and grow. And I'm telling you, it only gets better. I'm yeah. It only gets better. I think that's where I'm going to stop today. Again, thank you for the committee to allowing me to speak. Thank you for listening, for all of those who are on, and I'm really, really grateful for my life and recovery today. Thank you so much.